Hello everybody, John 12 back here again with another video, and I'm here to give you another documentary film review, and that's of course towards I Am Chris Farley, which is the newest documentary distributed by Spike TV, and of course is directed by Brent Hodge and Derek Murray, and is based off the life and times of comedian actor Chris Farley, and features multiple people from Chris Farley's life, like Bob Odenkirk, David Spade, Mike Myers, Adam Sandler, so on and so forth. And of course, this is, I think, on my channel, this has to be my second review on a documentary. The first one, I think, was the HBO Kurt Cobain documentary, which was Montage of Heck, which, of course, if you've not seen, please go check it out and check out my review for that documentary. And overall, I Am Chris Farley is a very intriguing, entertaining, fun, over-exaggeration of the life and times of Chris Farley. And at the end of the day, after watching this doc, it's very much a double-edged sword. It's very bitter. It's not really bittersweet, because at the end of the day, you come out of it with a big smile on your face, which I think would be the major intention at telling the side of the life of Chris Farley. Chris Farley's life is an entertaining life because that's the kind of person he was. And when I was growing up, Chris Farley was a legend. He was a childhood hero. He was the guy who defined, for at least for me anyways, and for my generation, he defined what it meant, what it means to be all about physical comedy. He defined physical comedy for my generation back in the 90s, and he was a god. But unfortunately, he died way too early from various sources like drugs and alcohol, and his explosive persona and what have you. And it was very sad to see that happen. But overall, there's been a gigantic time gap in between what happened back then and what happened now. So it seemed like a good opportunity to really sit down and document his amazing life, his awesome persona, his charisma on stage and on screen, and his life and struggles with dealing with his personal demons and what have you. And this documentary does a good job at telling the beautiful, over-exaggerated, happy-go-lucky, super sweet and cuddly side of Chris Farley, but it doesn't really go to the dark side. And as much as that sounds terrible for me to say, it's something that I really wanted to see out of this documentary. For me personally, when I go into documentaries about characters and actors and musicians and whoever the subject matter is, I feel that it's the number one aspect, or the number one job with the directors and filmmakers behind these projects, is to deconstruct the source material, to deconstruct their subject. And they don't really go into that really deep with the story of Chris Farley, which I think is really sad. I mean, at the end of the day, he had an awesome life. He had a wonderful life, and his job was to make other people laugh. And he did a great job at that. And this documentary does a good painting of that picture. But it doesn't paint every aspect of his life, which I think what this documentary should have been all about. It does a good job at giving you an awesome feel of who he was, and it gives you an amazing feel on the people around him that had a humongous impact on him, and how he had an impact on them, and vice versa, and what have you. And it was awesome to get those interviews from these specific people. It was awesome to hear Mike Myers talk about his times on SNL, and it was nice to hear Adam Sandler and David Spade working with Chris Farley and writing for him. It was nice to hear these specific actors and people discuss his life and what it was like working with him. But this movie, and forgive me for saying it as vulgar as it may sound, this documentary, all it does is get on its knees and sucks Chris Farley dry. That's all it really does. And as much as I like that, and as much as I enjoy that, I mean, like, you will find it very difficult watching this documentary and not wanting to watch it again, or finding it hard not to smile. It's an entertaining, fun documentary that every time you see Chris, and every time you hear him and see him do his thing, and doing the Matt Foley, to doing his Second City stage performances, to doing Tommy Boy, all these various things that are amazing, it's very entertaining and fun. But at the end of the day, it's just sad to see that they didn't paint the full picture. which is what I really wanted to see. I think it would have been more appropriate to really go in depth with everything. It felt like from day one, from point A, they wanted to go right to Z. They wanted to approach the second Chris Farley got famous. It's like the documentary has a good start, but it doesn't really go steady towards, a solid direction. It goes right to a curve, and it wants to go right to, okay, this is when Chris Farley was explosive. This is where he went to Chicago. This is when he joined SNL. This is when he became a movie star, and then he died. And that's kind of how the format and the outline as to how this documentary flows. And I'm not really big on that. As much as it's like the first real legitimate documentary on him, which I guess is good to see that. But at the same time, like, I feel like enough time has passed where we can be legitimate and sit here and be like, yeah, he was awesome, he was entertaining, he was a gem in comedy, but he was also an incredible, massive alcoholic and a drug addict. You can't sweep that under the rug and just pretend that doesn't exist. And that's kind of like, and I don't want to compare the two films because they're two completely different films and two completely different subject matters, but when you compare this to the last documentary I reviewed, which was Kurt Cobain Montage of Heck, the wonderful thing I loved about that movie is Brett Morgen's deconstruction of what Kurt Cobain really was, who he really was, and how he saw himself. And they didn't really do that with this. I really would have liked to have seen who Chris Farley really was, not just the person I saw in the movies and television shows. That's what I really wanted out of this documentary, and it doesn't do that, and that's really sad. I mean, like, I think, and I heard someone else, say this, and I'm paraphrasing their quote to death, but a specific reviewer stated that this documentary does a good job at painting a good side of the picture, but doesn't really do a good job at showing the whole thing. And essentially, if Chris Farley was alive and ever saw this documentary, he probably would have been, I guess, disappointed if they didn't do the whole thing, but I guess would have laughed and smiled overall because he would have loved the attention. That's kind of like the overall gist of what he was saying, and that's how I overall feel about this documentary. It feels like something that, like, 10 years from now, you probably won't be proud of, but every time you see it, you'll have a smile, and you'll probably laugh because it was fun and entertaining. And I guess, at the end of the day, the general gist of Chris Farley's life and his comedy was to do that. So, at that kind of aspect, it does its job, and it does its job very well. I mean, it was fun to hear Chris Farley's brothers talk about his life and talk about his troubles. It was fun to hear Bob Odenkirk talk about Second City. It was fun to hear, Mike Myers talk about, SNL. It was fun to hear these interviews, and it was fun to hear and see Chris Farley again. If you haven't done it already over the course of the last decade from watching his movies, like Billy Madison and Tommy Boy and Black Sheep over and over and over and over again. But at the end of the day, it was fun to see it again in a much more contained kind of element. But that being said, overall, the I Am Chris Farley is a fun, entertaining, interesting documentary, but it doesn't go all the way. And it doesn't go into too much depth beyond his, lifestyle and his personal struggles with his demons and the problems he had dealing with, I guess, being so famous. It doesn't really go all the way with those aspects with his life, which I really wish they could have done. And hopefully down the line, maybe a couple years from now, or maybe even a decade from now, hopefully another director or great filmmaker and studio really attach themselves to this project about the Chris Farley life and really do it justice, because not that this movie or premise or documentary doesn't do that, it does do that to a certain extent. And that's the problem with it. It does do a good job painting a good, fun, entertaining person, but doesn't show the full person, which is what I would like to see. And also, I found it kind of weird that with this documentary, they didn't really have a lot of archives and archival footage to Chris Farley. I mean, the majority of the documentary is mostly these actors and comedians discussing Chris Farley than actually having Chris Farley talk himself. I mean, you get that in the documentary, but not to a certain extent. And I also kind of found that a little sad. But overall, if I had to rate this documentary, I Am Chris Farley is a solid 7 for me personally. On a really, really good day, maybe even a 7.5. But at the end of the day, it is a solid 7. It's a good, fun, entertaining documentary that you'll have plenty of fun and smiles and laughs with when you watch it. But I still wish that the filmmakers or whoever was in charge of this really went all the way with exploring Chris Farley's life other than just the SNL days and the movie days and, and hanging out with Chris, and hanging out with David Spade and Adam Sandler. I would have liked to seen the major struggles and in the dark times. I wanted to go really in there. I wanted to go all the way, and they didn't really do that. And I guess that's the real dishonest, sad part of the documentary, that I Am Chris Farley doesn't go all the way, which I feel like it should. With a character and persona as big as Chris Farley, there's only one way to go, and that's fucking all the way. And that's what I wish this documentary could have done, and it doesn't do that. And that's the unfortunate side of it. But that being said, it doesn't destroy or dismantle the amazing life that he does have and the amazing life that it depicts in this movie. It does do that well, so I definitely recommend you checking it out if you've not done so already. It's an awesome, fun, entertaining documentary that really paints a fun, explosive, over-exaggerated person that will definitely put a smile and, laugh on your face. But that being said, comment below. Let me know what you personally thought about I Am Chris Farley. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Do you wish it was more do you wish it was more definitive? Do you think they should have explored more the dark times? Do you think it was perfect the way it was? Do you want to see another documentary or maybe a biopic on Chris Farley's life later down the line? Let me know in the comment section below. But that being said, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at John12. Subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already. And this has been John12.